What's up, man?
What's up, dude?
How are you doing?
I'm good.
Good. Nice.
Dance styles I do. I do 3 styles of urban dance that I'm active in the community and I'm practicing on a regular basis, as well as teaching. Those 3 styles are boogalooing or popping, locking. I do the London style, and Memphis juking. Those are the 3 styles that I consider like being like someone that's active and doing current research and staying involved in those 3. Yeah, so the term popping is the term that was used when I started doing the dance as well, and it's also the most widespread term that we know for the dance. But historically, we also know that the dance was called different things in prior years to them calling it popping. For example, some of the earliest dates per my research is 64 for Oakland Boogalooing. And some of the folks I've talked to have even said that they saw guys that were older than them at that time. So that being said, could be people doing what they called Boogaloo in Oakland prior to 64. But basically that was what they called their dancing in Oakland. The thing with popping and boogaloo and strutting and all these terms is that prior to social media and the ability to learn what it's called, where it's being created, they didn't have that. So the information was just passed through family, through people moving from Oakland to San Francisco or Oakland to Richmond or things like that. And in the different cities, different terms were being created to describe the dances they were doing. So Oakland, they called it boogaloo. San Francisco, they called it strutting. Richmond, they called it roboting. Sacramento, I've heard it been called popping in Sacramento, as well as sacking, the term sacking. San Jose, some of them called it popping as well. And as we know, the Electric Boogaloos, the group that came out of Fresno, they also called it popping. And they were the first group to get on television doing the dance in a mainstream way and had a big reach. And I believe them being like one of the first groups to travel and using the term popping is probably why it's the most widespread. That's why I called it popping when I started in 98, 99, because it was already a thing. But the reason why now today I say boogaloo, or sometimes I say popping, is because I just want to pay respect to the originals. So that's my way of paying homage to them, right? And I call it, if I want to speak traditionally, I'll call the dance boogaloo. But if I want to speak per my history and what I came up with, then I call it popping. But it's not to say that like anyone's term is greater than the other. It's just the terms African American communities used to describe the dance they were doing at the time. And it evolved over the years. Even in LA, they called it pop locking, they called it bopping. In New York, they called it electric boogie. In France, they called it smurf. In Europe, in general, they called it electric boogie for a long time. Because some of those movies coming out of New York were some of the ones inspiring everybody. Mr. Wave came over here. A lot of different people came and inspired. And some of them were saying electric boogie. And those movies were definitely promoting the term electric boogie. So yeah, you have a lot of different terms, but it basically, what we're talking about is African American dances from the different communities, and everybody having a little bit of a different approach on it. But Oakland is still like, if you look at Oakland Boogaloo, all, if not most of the movements we see today in popping, you can trace the root back to what they did in Oakland Boogaloo. So out of respect, I say Boogaloo as well. So something just to remember is that, and this is something that in the States most of us know this, but when I go overseas, it surprises me how much we have to explain that these are African American cultural dances. Like, these are traditional dances for African Americans per the city they were in. It'd be like, I don't know if there is one, but if there was a Dutch traditional dance, you know,
Yeah.
There's certain clothing for it. There's certain music for it, and there's certain movements for it. Now, we tend to today think of hip hop and popping and all these urban styles as just something that's cool and fashionable and trendy and in. But what we tend to forget is that it was culture for people. It was the way they lived. It was what got them through the day. It was what made them feel good about themselves. It uplifted a lot of them. It helped them to have creative outlets outside of violence and drugs and pimps and all these things that were happening in those neighborhoods. So African Americans in the States, there's of course the long history of slavery and that being a systemic thing that it's still going on today. You see it with the police brutality and many, many things. And that education is finally starting to happen in our country, whereas other countries have educated about things that were messed up that happened in the past. So I mean, at the time, these people were underprivileged. There's no other way to put it. It was an unequal system. After the slavery days, we went into Jim Crow. After Jim Crow laws, we went into separate but equal. And everything became segregated in the States. Different bathrooms, different water fountains, sitting in the back or the front of the bus, different schools for kids. And the last school to be desegregated were the schools in Alabama in 1971. 1971. So I mean, think about that. Even if Boogalooing started in 64, in 1971 the last school was desegregated. And then think about how long it takes for people in the way that they live to catch up with the laws. People don't like that. People don't like change. So that stuff we've been living with that stuff for a while over there. That's why people talk so much about race from the States, because it is a real thing for us. But the truth is, like, there was segregation still going on, and those people in those communities were not given fair chances to make a decent living and have a decent house or a decent education. And they didn't have a lot, but what they did have was their music from their people and the dances that they would create and do with each other. So I think the reason why they were doing it is because they were trying to uplift themselves. It was a way to feel pride, to feel good about, your life, even though some of these living situations are pretty rough, to have something to feel proud of. And I think that's why they were into that. Now, how did I get into thinking like that as a white American is a different story, because not a lot of white Americans even think like this, okay? A lot of my family is awesome, but there's things that they don't understand that I have to talk to them and educate them about these dances. I get a lot of comments, especially in the beginning, about I should be going into a certain type of education, or I shouldn't be going for street dance more, I should be going to be a school teacher, and these things. A lot of people in my family do that. It's an awesome job.
Still the story of that you have to become what your parents told you.
That, but also it's also connected to these misunderstandings of what urban dances are. For example, when I was in high school, I tried to start a breaking club, right? And the principal told me that I couldn't do that because it's gang related, right? This was in 2001. So my principal in my school said, no, you can't start a breaking club because that's a gang related activity. So that was 2001, right? I started that club. My mom went in there and raised hell, because that's what she's a dancer, and she always wanted me to go into dance, So she was supporting the street dance thing because at least it was dance. To her, she just wanted me to do dancing because she loves it so much, and she knew I would like it a lot. But so she went in there and got us the club. But that's just an example of the mentality. So people are thinking like that. There's a lot of misunderstandings from white Americans towards like African Americans, because we're still segregated. Even if you look at the cities, if you look at Memphis, if you look at New York, DC, Oakland, like if you look everywhere, I saw this in the Civil Rights Museum. They show you where the different races live within the cities, and it's still pockets. Everybody's still separated. Memphis is like, it's either the north is all white or all black, or the south, but it's completely separated. So we still live separated in a way that we're not really being educated on each other's cultures. So I got into being more aware of that through House and Rashad becoming my mentors in street dance. You know, so that was awesome because I wanted to listen to them because they were so dope and I wanted to be like them. And that allowed me to be more open and to listen to some of these things and to take in different perspectives. So joining urban artistry helped me to open up as just a thinker and a person, to be more open to different cultural perspectives in general, even outside of African American, but just in general. So Urban Artistry is our dance company. It started with the Assassins crew in DC, and then Rashad and House, they started Urban Artistry for a dance company so we could do work in the schools and not always have to use the name Assassins, because you don't want to be the assassin after school teacher, like coming in, the Assassins. So they made Urban Artistry, and the mission was basically like preservation of urban dance. And the goal is to be three-dimensional and to be a cultural ambassador. So three-dimensional meaning you don't just do choreography, or you don't just do freestyle, or you don't just think in one way. You try to think in many ways and open up all your possibilities in dance, whether that be research, performance, battling, teaching, whatever. And being a cultural ambassador means that we want folks to be a representative for that culture and city where that dance comes from. And how do you do that? You need to be connected to that community in some way. That's why for strutting and the Oakland styles, we go there. We're linked with people in those communities, and we're active in those communities. You know, we're bringing those guys to our event. You know, so we're showing them that we appreciate what they've done, and we give them opportunities. You know, so we try to give back to those communities and those people in some way. And I think that's like just a general way to respectfully learn a cultural dance. You know, you got to treat it like it's someone's home you're going into. Especially for me, being like a white American in a place with this sort of history, I have to treat it like a guest in a home. And then if I'm a good guest, I might be invited to stay. And if I'm invited to stay, then maybe eventually I can, you know, influence some things and make some rules myself. And that's kind of what we've been doing, is like being involved in those communities and sort of being a representative, so that when we come over here, when we come overseas, like I know that Pop-Tart's like, I want you to be the representative. And same with Rico, I want you to be the representative for Jukin. I want you to talk about it because you came here, you learned it with respect, you understand how the city works, how the people work, as well as the moves. So for us, it's way more than the moves. It's all about the culture of the people and the why behind the dance. And that's why we're kind of different. Yeah, so there are people doing this. There are. It's not in the exact same way that we do it, because there's certain things that we're like trying to be an ambassador as well as three-dimensional. But there are people going to places and soaking up that information and connecting with people. A lot of people in Europe are going to the Light Feet community now in New York, and they're going there, which is great. They're meeting these people, which is great. They're learning, you know. And then they come back to Europe and maybe they start teaching, or hopefully they do something that reciprocates what these folks want. And in every situation that could be different, because what this community wants and needs when you go there could be different than like going to Brazil and learning capoeira. Like they don't allow you to teach unless you have certain credentials. Yeah. But Memphis and those guys, they were like, we want you to teach right now because you understand the basics. So it's different. So you have to be aware of that. But yeah, there's people going to like Cuba, learning like Afro-Cuban styles, and Brazil, and learning capoeira, and people going to Memphis. More people are going to Memphis now. So I do see it happening. People are going to the Bay, like different European dancers. I wouldn't say there's like a country that's like known for it, but there's like pockets of people. A few people in London, people in Poland, Sweden, Denmark definitely, like the Clash CPH folks. They come to DC and we have like an exchange going on. So it's just not as common. But even in the States, it's also not common. So it's not common anywhere, really. I think it's happening a lot, and it's not impossible to say, like, it's really easy actually to say we can do better as a whole. Like, I think we can do better than that. I think some people just don't know how, and they've never even, like I said, when I say that these are African American cultural dances, most of the Europeans I've talked to just are kind of like, oh really? You know, like, we were just at a panel in Denmark and that's what happened. People were like, oh yeah, we never thought of it like that. So that's the first step, is like being aware that they are cultural dances. Could you imagine me, you know, like just seeing a Dutch traditional dance on television, and I'm teaching it in my country, and I'm trying to wear the costuming.
It sounds crazy.
It sounds insane. But that's what's been happening to a lot of African American traditions for years. Like, white Americans have been taking those things for years. Elvis's music is black music. The most popular music in the States is hip hop, and the people winning Grammys are white guys. The way people dress now is hip hop. I mean, everything is African American culture, but people don't even put two and two together. They're just dressing like it because it's fashionable.
Mm-hmm.
So things become fashionable, and people do things, and they teach these things, but it's easy to say, like, when I see that, I'm always thinking we can do better. I don't say that's messed up, that's a bad person. I say, okay, there might be some things that they're not aware of, and I think we can do better. And the first step is to connect with that community in some way, or connect with someone that is connected to those communities. I do that a lot. I work with you with that. I work with Focus in Sweden, and you know, like, it would be the same thing. Like, if I was in the States, but like I was connected with you in some way, and you were like, this is what this community needs, I think you should start teaching Dutch traditional dance in the States.
Mm-hmm.
Then it makes a little more sense, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe we learned through Skype lessons, or maybe through just whatever, you know, or me and you just linked up. You came to the States and taught me. Then there's somewhat of a connection, right? It's about connecting to the community and being aware of the community. So we can always do it better when we think about connecting with more people than ourselves, and it makes it more selfless. It makes it less of seem like a selfish thing. To outside people, if you're trying to do that, it's like, oh, okay, they care about more than just what they're gaining from the culture. They want to be connected and create opportunities for other people too, and that says a lot. Now we do all kinds of things. We have students within the program. It's also connected to urban artistry, so it's something within urban artistry. So we have like people we mentor in person in DC, and then we just started made available online courses. So we have an online program. It's drop-ins, 8-week signups or 16-week signups, and it's basically like private lessons through Skype. And we set goals together, and then we build a curriculum for that person for the time. And we meet weekly and work on whatever it is we're going to work on. But again, the education is a lot more than choreography and drills because of the way we teach and think. It's research, it's watching videos together sometimes, it's, you know, studying up on different things, drills, concepts.
But also for people who already teach these dance styles in their country.
And people that teach, and people that want to become better teachers too. I mean, that's kind of the idea of balancing tradition with innovation, right? So if you think about the dances traditionally, you always find that it's traditional to be innovative. In like all of these street dances, that's a part of tradition. So innovation is just expected, right? That's just gonna happen, because when I learned from some of my mentors like Damon, Steen, Thomas, Rashad, Rico, Locksmith, whoever it may be, House, I'm gonna be tweaking these traditional things in my own way. The music is different today, we're dressed a little different today, you know, I'm interpreting these moves a little bit different because on my body it feels a little bit different than it's going to on theirs. And me knowing that I'm supposed to tweak things and that's a traditional thing, that encourages me to keep changing the game and keep breaking the rules if I have to create something new. The funny thing is, like, if you look at all the historical groups, they all broke the rule, and that was the point. Everyone was breaking the rule. If you look at 1+1, Jerry Rente's group, they're doing a lot of like imitating cartoons, James Brown dance steps, cha-cha dance steps, and then like the Ray Harryhausen claymation things. And then you look at the Black Resurgence in 1971, and they were inspired by Motown. So they're doing like a lot of like group stepping things and these steps, and then they're like posing and robot, and then they do a little Charlie Chaplin and a little bit of Chuck Berry. They were imitating like jazz dancers and rock musicians. And then if you look at a group, I think the Messengers were either 71 or 72, but they had a completely different style. All the swoops, the bamming, the hard creeps, the hard hits, the zombie routines. Everyone was coming with something completely new. So we know, like, okay, we're gonna study up and learn these traditions, you know, and be connected with these people. And at the same time, we're also gonna break rules and create trends and build new things, you know. Even learning juking, strutting, electric boogaloo, anything, right? Any London locking. Because I can do all four of those things, when I do my strutting, I might have a little bit of juking footwork mixed in there. I might be able to extend a little bit more with my strutting because of my London locking, you know. So these things are all mixing. It's like we take the old stuff and then we know how to do it separately. So then when we do mix it, it looks really solid and it looks like something brand new. And I think that's what we're doing. Like we're kind of creating our own style of popping. Like if you look at Assassins, it's like, okay, nobody really moves like that except those guys.
Mm-hmm.
But you can also say, but look, like, oh, there was strutting there. Oh, that was a little juking. Okay, that was electric boogaloo style. That was Oakland for sure with the swoops and the bams. So you can see it, but then you put it together, it just creates a new thing. So just take the old and just reinvent the wheel with it. Yeah, it is. It's a way to stay motivated all the time. Because the days that you could think about it in dance or even outside of dance. So in dance, it's like, if I'm just a popper, then it's cool. And there's a lot of styles in popping, so you can do it and make it work and jump from style to style. I'm not feeling touched. Let me get in some waves. Okay, I need to get in some ground moves because I get my legs working, you know. It's really nice to jump back and forth. But even take that outside of popping and say, oh, I'm working on tap dancing or I'm working on my house dancing and my popping. It's really nice because the thing is, like, the different styles, they all complement each other in different ways. Poppers that learn hip hop and house will be very groovy and funky. And a lot of poppers aren't very groovy and funky. Mm-hmm. So maybe those people should try some other styles. It's just body movement and characters. So why not? The more body movement and characters you have, the better you'll be at any of those things individually. So they all work together. So I was really glad, like with the Assassins, you have to be practicing 3 styles. And when I got in, I wasn't. So I was like, okay, I had to start doing that. And it really is like a helpful thing. It helps a lot. And then you can think of it outside of dance too. So you can think of it like avenues of dance. It can be related to dance or even not. But like for me, it's usually related to dance, like dance research. Then there's like dancing. Then there's like stretching. Then there's,
music, for example.
Music research, listening to music, performance, teaching, battling, clubbing. If you have a little bit of all of those, like you will always be motivated. You'll always have something that you can do, and you just jump back and forth and whatever you're feeling that week or that month, and it's like a game. You're always enjoying it, and you're always getting better. The better you get at performing, the better you'll get at battling. The better you get at clubbing, the better you get at creating choreographies, because your freestyle will get better. And most choreography comes from people trying to freestyle and make things up. The more your research gets better, the more your mind starts opening for your solos, and you're like, oh, Black Resurgence use Motown group stepping? Okay, let me try that, you know? And the more you know with that stuff, it just all complements each other. So it's like, yeah, it's funny you brought that up, because we were just talking about that in Denmark. Some of the students at one of the educations were asking me how to stay motivated. But it really has to do with not just doing one thing. Do a lot of different things. Yeah, and outside of dance, it could be anything. You could be into music, into dance, into anthropology, into whatever, movies, into comics, like anything that you enjoy. Somehow the inspiration is working back and forth, and everything gets a little bit better like that, you know, starts getting better at different times. But if you just go into one thing and try to go like that, it's like you just plateau. I mean, there's definitely been people throughout the years that have been great at one thing and made a difference, you know, like there's nothing wrong with that. Like you can do what you do and be like, you know, Bill Bojangles or someone that changes everything, you know, and that's awesome. But I think that if there's other things that can inspire you in different ways, that's just another way to change what you're doing already. So like, if you're always just following the trend, right? If you're always like, oh, Green Tech's doing this right now, or Pete's doing this right now, so that's what I'm gonna do. And you're basically riding coattails. You're like on the back end of something. But a lot of the people that are creating those trends are not people riding coattails. They're people that are like, have their feet in different areas. And because they have their feet in different areas, when they do get into that avenue, they come with something completely different, and it starts to inspire other people to go in that opposite direction. So it's like, do you want to be a trendsetter, or do you want to be someone that just does what's trendy because it works in a battle? And that's a personal choice. That's not the choice that I would make, and that's not what I do. I choose to be more of a trendsetter. But again, there's people that do one thing and they're great at it.
Have your own trends, you know, but if people jump on the wagon,
then you start another one.
Yeah, then you just start another one.
Yeah, that's what's been happening to African American dances since the beginning. When all these people started taking their music, taking their dances, what do? They created something new. So they're the trendsetters, like just in general. But they keep changing it. Now they do, you know, now they do flexing in New York. Now they do lifey, now they do shaking. Like, they just keep changing. In New Orleans, they have the New Orleans bounce. In Atlanta, they have yeek dancing. So yeek dancing. Yeah, it's fun. It's cool. You should check it out. Yeah, it's really dope, actually. It's really dope. But I mean, that's the thing. Like, they just keep changing it because people keep jumping on. So for me and Rashad, when people jump on, we usually like, we just go in a different direction. And then people jump there and we go like this, and people jump there and we go like that. We're always doing this. It's like, it's funny. I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only one, or me and Rashad aren't the only ones that inspired these things, but it's really clear that, like for tutting, when I did it at Just Debut, that had some influence. With Rashad, the hip hop popping thing that he was doing in 2007 and 8 at Unity and Respect, no one was doing groovy hip hop with their popping. I'd never seen that before. I'm sure people did in the past, but we have a way, because we're seeable and we enter these avenues and we're talented, that what we do somehow becomes acceptable. Like I heard people saying it, like even what's his name, Devious, he was like, when I saw you do a juking solo in Sweden, I told myself, I'm gonna learn that. So it's like Rashad with the hip hop hopping, me with the juking, Rashad with the strutting, right? A lot of people played a part in that. Pop-Tart, the BRS, Playboys. But still, like, even the way Rashad inspired me to just kind of mix styles into my popping, that became a thing. Now Guchan's doing house in his popping solos, and bunch of other people are mixing all kinds of styles. But there was a time when that was not okay. They'd say, you're a good dancer, but you're not a good popper. That's what they would say to that. And that became a thing. Even the way I started putting my hands on the ground, that was something Popula did before, but I started to make that a thing when I hurt my knee, you know, and sitting down, now I'm doing all those sitting down things, and now everyone's sitting down and laying down. And I'm not saying I'm the only one, but there's clear things that we do that are affecting what the majority and the masses in the urban dance scene are doing. So, yeah. Trendsetter, but you got to keep changing it, because if you do it and then people catch on, then it feels stale, and then it's like, then it becomes everyone's doing it, and we're always avoiding the trend. I mean, we don't want to be on the trend. We want to be ahead of it.
Yeah. So the tradition of being yourself has a lot also to do by educating yourself in multiple disciplines, right? So that it makes your own. So that it makes more of what you also like to do, and that you can also be one of.
I think that's something that for me personally has helped a lot. Learning a lot of different things, when I bring it all together, has made me someone that is pretty unique. So I think that helped me a lot. So the same thing we do with our styles, we do with our event, you know. Do something that can start a movement for bettering the culture as a whole. So the Book of Styles, I think the first year we did it was 2012. I think it was 12 or 11. And basically we wanted to see more diversity in popping battles, so we created an event. We spin a wheel. It's called the Wheel of Funk. Whatever style it lands on, the two dancers will do that style against each other in their own way, however they want to interpret the style. Then we spin it again in the second round, whatever style it lands on, they do the same thing. It has a way of challenging the dancers because they have to prepare for the wheel. They see it ahead of time and they can see what's on it and they get to practice for that. So it educates the dancers. It educates the audience because then they become aware of what's happening in the battle. Most people at battles, like if you're not a popper, they're like, oh, okay, he went like that, I don't know what that is, oh, he twisted, okay. They don't know the styles, they don't know what's happening. But if we say, okay, first round is tutting versus tutting, then they're learning. Now they're learning what tutting is, or they're learning what puppet is. And it also makes the dancers actually respond to each other. Because most popping battles, people are just like, oh, I'm going to do what I do. And then the other guy just goes, okay, I'm going to do what I do. And it's like, we can't even, how are we supposed to judge this? You guys aren't even showing who is better at a thing. So it made it easier for the judges. It made it easier to judge because it was like this thing. You can see when someone's weak at something, it's obvious. And when they're strong at something, it's obvious as well. So yeah, we did that to push diversity and to basically give the same practice sessions, that types of practices me and Rashad were doing, out to everyone. Because that's how we got better. We started doing those Book of Styles practices. And then we were like, okay, it's educational, so let's do something for the community that brings education to an event. And
at the same time, yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I don't think we need less battling. I think we need more of everything else to balance it out. I do think we need balance, right? Like this is a competition era. This is a studio, people learning in studios era. Theater is becoming a thing. I know you guys have more of that here than we do in the States, and also in Denmark they have a bit of it. But I think we need balance. So I love like what the battles do. They bring people together, they keep people competitive, you know, like there's a lot of good things about them as well. But we just need more of all the other things so people that are in the battle community can say, hey, maybe there's an avenue for me in this world too, in the theater world, or in the research world. Where we're lacking the most is the research world. That's what I wish more people would do. Like these things, like interviews and things like this. I think like what we're doing these Boogaloo Traditions interviews for popping to bring out stories of different people that are kind of unsung heroes within the popping and Boogaloo community. I wish someone was doing that for hip hop right now, for Vogue, for locking. Like I wish everyone was doing that. because we would be so much more educated on all the different perspectives and all the different stories that make up what we know as like the urban dance community and culture today. But we're limited in research and study.
How do you think that, why is that? Why are we not researching that much?
I think it just hasn't come to people's awareness yet that it's important. You know, like someone that wants to win a battle, it's kind of hard to convince them that doing an interview or meeting with an older dancer is gonna be beneficial. You know, it's a selfless act too, and it's not super glorified either. It's something that is super selfless. You didn't put someone else's story out. You do get to say that you did that, which is awesome. But it's for you, but it's really for everyone, because that information is for everyone to gain from, to gain insight and knowledge. And there's no reward for it. You know, it's like a selfless, rewardless sort of thing. You know, I think once we get to the point where people are making documentaries, it might be different, but we haven't reached that point yet. So I think it's just people just don't see the end result in it. They don't understand why it's so important. I know for me, it's been super important just because as an educator, it's made my teaching so much better, because I'm really diving into all these different perspectives and stories, and I can teach those things to my students. And it influences my solos too, like I was saying, like the things I hear in those interviews makes me look up different videos and get inspired by different things. Motown, jazz dancers, all kinds of stuff, because those guys were inspired by that. So it's really helpful, but yeah, I think we're just not quite there yet as a community. I just did an interview with Thomas Hedot from the legendary Danish crew called Out of Control. He's one of my mentors. Known him since 2011. And I was documenting his story with Out of Control, how he learned from Damon, how he moved to Germany and inspired a lot of the German poppers, and inspiring Storm as well for popping, and also being like one of the pioneers for streetwear in Denmark. He opened one of the first streetwear stores in Denmark. So, I mean, that was like the latest interview that I did. But research-wise, I'm looking a lot into blues and jazz a bit too, but mostly like blues and slave time dances right now. Learning a lot from Junius about ring shouts and buck dancing and some of these things that are just so under the rug, you know? Yeah. So we're trying to pull these things out and talk about it and show how it's so connected to what we're doing in urban dance. The ring shout is basically a cipher that the slaves would do at the end of their long day. They would do it in the church, and it was a way that they would basically just celebrate and enjoy themselves. And they were being percussive with their hands and singing, and then people would go in the center and take solos. And Junius's research points it back to some of the West African and Nigerian traditions. One is called a walk around, which was a spiritual thing for some of the tribes there. And so, I mean, it's all connected, you know? Yeah. It's all important, so I'm trying to go way back. If you're someone that's just doing choreography and learning choreography, it can be good for learning certain styles. Like for London Locking, I learned it first by doing choreographies in that style. But you have to be aware that you need to find ways to apply what you're doing. So for me, that could be chopping it into tiny pieces and making the small parts something foundational that I can repeat. But if you don't know how to do that, you're just doing choreography all the time, it's fairly useless unless you're just going to be doing performance or you're just going to be a backup dancer. So my honest opinion on choreography, I use it, but I would never only use it, because I think just teaching choreography is an outdated system of education. And I think by now we should be smart enough to know that it doesn't work. Look at the people that have the best students and look at how they're teaching them. most of it's experiential learning in the club, doing it, in the cipher, doing it. Rarely is it anyone that's learning just through choreography. It's fact that those are some of the most insecure dancers that are just doing choreography, the least confident, and the least knowing who they really are in expressing themselves. You gotta get in there and learn through experience, and you gotta fall and get back up, and you gotta feel insecure and push through it to really find who you really are. You gotta put yourself in these uncomfortable situations. Those are the students that are becoming the best, the ones that are learning in those environments. I mean, I don't take that route just because I'm in a group of people that has like a mission for preservation and being a cultural ambassador. So a lot of what's happening in the choreography lane is super disconnected to the culture, actually. And actually what I usually do is ask myself, if I'm doing this, where will I be in 10 years with this? So if someone is doing choreography and in 10 years they want to be a backup dancer, then that's their choice and that's awesome. That's what they want to do. But yeah, I'm surrounded by people that do so much more than that, you know? So I want to be so much more than just choreography, and I don't want to be backup. I don't want to be backup to a different art form. I want dance to be the head art form. You know, I want to get dance that respect that musicians have. I want to get urban dance the respect that the other dances have. So I got my work to do. So, you know, for me it's an easy choice because I have my mission and I have my goals and I have my purpose and I'm just working in that.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, for people that are in those worlds, you just got to ask yourself, in 10 years, what will I be doing with this path, and is that what I want to do?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's all about purpose.